You know that feeling, right? That incredible, explosive burst of energy you get at the start of something new.
Oh, absolutely. The new project, the new gym membership on January 1st.
Exactly. The motivation is just so pure, the vision is crystal clear, and for a moment, you feel, you feel invincible. We call that initial surge intensity.
And that intensity, if we really look at it, it's often what the sources we're looking at today call lighter fluid passion.
Lighter fluid passion, I like that.
Yeah, it's this huge flame, right? Goes up really fast, but it's completely unsustainable. It burns hot, it burns fast, and then poof, it's gone. And it leaves almost nothing substantial behind.
So you're left with just ash.
Pretty much. And this kind of raw passion is tied to what Fillmore calls flighty emotions and quick tempers. So
Right.
when we rely on that volatile energy, we feel powerful for a second, but ultimately we're not steering our own lives. We're more like a tiny boat just being tossed around at sea with no rudder.
That is a perfect visual. So let's talk directly to you for a second. If you've ever felt that really frustrating pain of starting a huge goal strong, only to just quit the moment it gets uncomfortable.
That limbic friction, as the neuroscientists call it, that resistance from your own brain.
Exactly. If you felt that, then this exploration is absolutely for you. Because starting is easy. We're not looking for another spark. We're looking for the permanent infrastructure of staying power. We need substance, not just that flare of emotion that always fades.
Intensity fades, steadiness endures.
Precisely. The focus today is on building that substance. We're exploring the foundational human faculty of strength.
And this comes from Charles Fillmore's framework, where he symbolized this power with the disciple Andrew.
Right, and the name Andrew literally means strong man. But, and this is the critical part, true strength in this system is not defined by how much you can lift in one explosive go. It's all about your enduring capacity for steadfastness, for fundamental, unshakable stability over the long haul.
So our mission today is really to give you the blueprints for that inner architecture of endurance. And by the time we're done, you're going to walk away with really 3 key outcomes. First, you'll learn how to upgrade your willpower, thinking of it not as some vague idea, but as a real trainable muscle that's fueled metabolically.
And second, we're going to lay out the structural difference between that short-term intensity and true long-term endurance. We'll use the science of muscle fibers and mitochondrial capacity to really ground this.
And finally, you'll learn how to practice what we're calling quiet power. It's about mastering emotional restraint, and we're going to draw some really powerful, maybe unexpected lessons from leaders famous for their stillness, like Rosa Parks and even the basketball legend Tim Duncan. If this episode helps you, please hit like and subscribe for the next one.
Okay, so to start, we have to move past the common idea of strength as just, physical force. Fillmore's original definition is that strength equals stability and steadfastness.
Stability and steadfastness, not power, not force.
Exactly. It's the core capacity to sustain a load. And that's physical, yes. But more importantly, it's emotional and mental load. And he actually located this power in the body, specifically in the region of the loins and the lower back.
That's significant, isn't it? The core, that's your physical center of gravity. It's where all your movement comes from.
It is. If your core is weak, all your actions become unstable.
Right.
It symbolizes that fundamental generative life force that supports everything else you do.
But Fillmore also warned about a paradox here. He talked about the strong man fully armed.
Yes, and that represents mere physical, ego-driven force. He called that kind of strength brittle.
Brittle, meaning it looks strong, but it can't bend.
It shatters under pressure. It has great initial power, sure, but it's not adaptable. True imperishable strength has to be refined by a kind of spiritual stability. The goal isn't to dominate for a moment and then collapse. It's to build something that can endure for decades.
So if the core competency isn't force, but stability, how do we actually engage that? What's the mechanism, psychologically speaking?
The psychological core of this stability is what we can call the pause and plan response. It's the trained ability to override that immediate reactive fight-or-flight impulse.
The impulse that makes you snap at a coworker or hit the snooze button again.
Or just quit a hard task when the reward feels too far away. And neurologically, this intentional pause is highly active in a specific part of the brain called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, or the AMCC.
Okay, the AMCC, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. So for those of us without a neurobiology degree, what is this willpower hub? Is it just raw brain power?
It's much more like a specialized piece of equipment. Think of it like a highly trained cognitive valve or maybe a calculator. The AMCC's job is to monitor conflicts, to assess effort versus reward.
So it's calculating if the work is worth it.
Exactly. It decides that the cost of the effort is worth the delayed benefit. And when it's activated, it helps us achieve what the French call sang-froid, that cold-bloodedness, that unshakable calm.
It's the part of the brain that lets you feel chaos swirling around you, but still stay focused and execute your plan.
Yes, it literally forces you to choose the long-term stable response over the short-term explosive emotional reaction.
Willpower Hub, the AMCC.
That's the mental side of it. But what's really fascinating is how the physical evidence, the physiology, perfectly mirrors this psychological concept. It really reinforces this idea that true strength is about long-haul capacity, not a one-time burst.
It does, perfectly. When you look at exercise science, true strength is defined by endurance over force. Think about the difference between, say, an elite powerlifter who's focused on one single instantaneous lift.
Versus an ultramarathon runner.
Exactly. An ultramarathon runner is focused on sustained endurance over hours and hours. Explosive power, which is built on what's called fast-twitch muscle fibers, is inherently fast, but metabolically it's just not sustainable.
But the kind of strength Fillmore is describing, this steadiness and stability, that requires a whole different kind of physical training, right? It's about building the capacity for continuous output.
Absolutely. The most robust human body is built on volume and consistency. And it's that consistency that increases your mitochondrial density.
Mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, right?
The powerhouse of the cell. They are the tiny engines of cellular endurance. They take in glucose and oxygen, and they generate sustained energy. So training for pure power increases the size of your muscle fibers. But training for steadiness, what some call long, slow-distance training, it stimulates the body to create more mitochondria.
So you are literally physically building more little energy engines inside your cells. You are. You're delaying fatigue at a cellular level. You're increasing your physical capacity for perseverance. The physical reality perfectly mirrors the psychological one.
Yeah.
Intensity can sharpen a skill, but it's volume and consistency that build the character required for long-term steadiness.
Consistency creates mitochondrial density.
Okay, so if we accept that strength is this capacity to endure, then we have to accept that it's a finite resource. It has to be managed. That's the key. We tend to think of willpower as this unlimited well we can just draw from. But the science is so clear. It operates like a muscle that can get incredibly fatigued. And the number one enemy you mentioned is metabolic drain. What does that mean for just, an average person trying to stick to a goal?
It means that willpower is extremely metabolically expensive. That AMCC, the prefrontal cortex, the parts of your brain doing all that heavy lifting of self-regulation and planning, they are glucose hogs.
Glucose hogs.
They use way more fuel than the rest of the brain when you're concentrating or using self-control. There are studies that show skipping meals or being sleep deprived or just running on fumes, it literally weakens your resolve.
Because there's no fuel for the decision-making part of the brain.
You've got it. You lose the fuel needed to execute that rational, forward-looking plan, and your brain defaults to the hot, emotional system of the limbic brain. You basically collapse into impulsivity because you are just depleted.
Willpower needs fuel, glucose.
It's like trying to run a supercomputer on a single AA battery. But it's not just about food, is it? Fillmore uses this amazing phrase, thundering vibrations, to describe unmanaged emotions. How does that chronic emotional stress drain the same fuel supply?
Well, chronic emotional stress, living in that constant state of low-grade fight or flight from unmanaged anger or anxiety, it siphons off a tremendous amount of energy. When your amygdala, your fear center, is constantly firing, it floods your system with stress hormones.
Which puts your body on high alert.
Constantly. And that diverts blood flow and energy resources away from the prefrontal cortex and towards the primitive survival centers. Unmanaged emotions create a massive energy leak. Those thundering vibrations exhaust the entire nervous system. That's what burnout is. And then there's something we all underestimate: decision fatigue. And we're not talking about big life choices here, are we? It's the small, trivial ones. The small ones are the killers. Every tiny choice you make all day: what shirt to wear, which email to answer first, what to eat for lunch. Each one requires a small, measurable dip into that limited willpower reserve.
I've heard about that study with the judges.
It's a famous one, and it's sobering. It found parole judges were far more likely to deny parole, which is the easier default decision late in the day or right before lunch. They literally ran out of the mental energy needed to engage in complex, empathetic decision-making.
So by the time you get to the really important high-stakes decisions later in the day, you've got nothing left in the tank.
Nothing but exhaustion. and you default to the easiest path, which is usually quitting or just reacting emotionally.
So the cure for all this depletion isn't just relaxation. If willpower is a trainable muscle, then the solution has to be controlled stress followed by recovery.
That's the formula. It's exactly like resistance training. You have to systematically push beyond your normal limits to increase your capacity.
But the recovery part is non-negotiable.
It is absolutely critical. If
Yeah.
you just push and push without recovery, you don't build strength, you create structural damage. That means recovery rituals are not a luxury. Sufficient, high-quality sleep, managing your blood sugar by eating regularly, and this is a big one, maintaining positive emotional energy.
Meaning friendships, relationships.
Yes. Fillmore really emphasized that these things aren't just nice-to-haves, they are metabolic needs. Positive emotional connection refuels you. Isolation, on the other hand, makes you incredibly fragile.
This management of energy brings us to a really important distinction. People often confuse strength with, well, with rigidity or just pure explosiveness. We need to clearly separate these three things.
Let's do it. First, we have strength, which is the tortoise. It's defined by sustainable stamina and grit. And psychologically, grit is that combination of perseverance, of effort, and long-term consistency of interests.
So it's not just about working hard, it's about working hard on the same thing for a long time.
For a very long time. Gritty individuals operate on what we could call an invest and accrue model. They have the foresight to accept short-term discomfort, that daily microsuck, for a much larger delayed reward. They're building health, or a skill, or a business over years, even decades.
Okay, so strength is the tortoise. Then
Yeah.
we have intensity, the hare.
The hare. This is that explosive short-duration power. And it's useful. It's great for sprints, for jump-starting a project, for certain types of training like HIT, but it cannot be your permanent state of being.
Because it leads to burnout.
It always leads to burnout. Passion, when it's unchecked by judgment or order or sustained effort, it's just a form of intensity that inevitably consumes itself. It's all flash and no foundation.
And the third one, which I think is the most misunderstood, is stubbornness, the boulder.
The boulder. It's often confused with strength because it looks like non-yielding resistance. But it's actually ego-driven rigidity. It's a fixed mindset that refuses to adapt.
Stubbornness says, I won't change, even if the evidence says I should.
Exactly. It refuses to bend. And what happens to things that don't bend when the pressure gets too high?
They break. They shatter.
They shatter. Rigidity lacks the flexibility needed to absorb shock.
Rigidity leads to breaking. That's such a powerful distinction. But it raises a question. How do we make sure our strength stays flexible and doesn't harden into that kind of rigidity? Where does the flow come from?
The flexibility comes from a crucial structural element, which our sources refer to as love or self-compassion.
Okay, unpack that. How does love prevent rigidity?
Without that bridge of self-compassion, strength almost always devolves into that brittle, ego-driven stubbornness. Love keeps strength human and adaptable by allowing for the forgiveness of mistakes.
Which is necessary for any long-term project. You're going to make mistakes.
You're going to have setbacks. And if you criticize yourself relentlessly for every minor failure, you introduce this immense mental friction. You drain the very energy you need for tenacity. Forgiveness isn't a weakness. It's a structural requirement for long-term, sustainable effort. You have to conserve the energy you'd otherwise waste on beating yourself up.
So compassion is like the lubricant that keeps the engine of perseverance running smoothly. That's a great way to put it. And it connects to a great metaphor we can use to tie this all together. The ship at sea. Passion or intensity, that's just the wind in the sails. It's raw, volatile power. But without the rudder of zeal, which is that eyes forward, disciplined, action-oriented resolve, the ship is just tossed around by emotional storms. So zeal is the thing that keeps you on course, even when the wind dies down.
Or when the wind is blowing you in the wrong direction.
Mm.
Zeal is the consistency that matters. It's the hand on the rudder, day in and day out.
Okay, let's take this redefined idea of strength as steadiness, endurance, and restraint, and see how it works in the real world. Let's look at 3 applications.
Starting with work and crisis management.
Right. In any high-stakes job, steadiness isn't just a nice quality to have. It's a trained skill that determines whether you succeed or fail. And we often think strong leaders are the ones who jump into action immediately.
But true strength often looks like the exact opposite. It looks like deliberate inaction.
A fantastic example of this is Abraham Lincoln. He was known for a specific strategy, wasn't he?
He was. He consciously implemented a 4-second pause before responding to any high-stakes political or military reports. This practice is all about using a deliberate moment of doing nothing to let that initial emotional heat just dissipate before he reacted.
And 4 seconds is specific. It's just long enough to interrupt that knee-jerk reaction.
It is. It's just long enough to stop the immediate reflexive wiring of the amygdala from taking over. It gives the prefrontal cortex, that AMCC we talked about, enough time to come online and execute the pause and plan response. It's a way to actively neutralize the explosive energy of a crisis.
So the key isn't waiting until you feel calm. You're using a physical structure, the pause, to create the calm.
You are imposing calm on the situation. And this is why preparation is so critical. You have to train for performance under pressure by practicing when conditions are deliberately bad.
Like what?
We see this in military and emergency response training. Teams are often made to practice complex communication phrases after a really hard physical workout, when they're tired, their glucose is low, and they're literally gasping for breath.
Why would they add that layer of fatigue to the training? It seems counterintuitive.
It's about inoculation. It's calibrating your expectations for the worst-case scenario. You learn that in a real crisis, your voice might crack. You might not get a full sentence out clearly. You will be physically exhausted.
So when it happens for real, you're not shocked by your own body's response.
Exactly. That reduction of cognitive shock is what allows you to maintain momentum instead of freezing up. Training while you're tired builds both the mitochondrial capacity and the neurological pathways you need to remain steady under the absolute worst conditions.
Practice while you're tired. Okay, let's move to the second application. Relationships and leadership. Here, true strength almost never looks like aggression or being the loudest person in the room. Often, it looks like profound stillness.
And this is perfectly embodied by the quiet leadership archetype. A great modern example is Tim Duncan, the basketball player, a 5-time NBA champion.
Not known for being a flashy vocal leader.
Not at all. He wasn't known for trash talk or huge emotional outbursts. His own coach described him as calm and composed and all business. But, and this is key, he was also known for being incredibly kind. His leadership was structural, not vocal.
What does that mean, structural?
It means his presence changed the environment. In moments of chaos on the court, his coach said Duncan would just put his hand on somebody's shoulder or be in a timeout. He would say something and everybody would calm down.
So his stillness reduced the anxiety of everyone else. If the anchor is holding, the rest of the ship feels safe.
That's it. His non-reactive, stable presence creates what we now call psychological safety for the whole team or for a family. They know the center won't shift, no matter what the score is or what storm is raging outside.
And of course, a historical example of this is Rosa Parks. Her strength was what you called the courage to sit still.
Her quiet dignity was not a passive act of weakness. It was an incredibly active, non-aggressive display of stillness that required immense internal fortitude and restraint. It was powerful because it was an act of willful, steady endurance in the face of punitive force. Quiet power is often the loudest because it's the most stable.
Quiet leadership is loudest.
This leads to a really critical distinction in how we use our power, the idea of strength with restraint.
Yes. We have to distinguish between what's called the punitive use of force, which is designed to cause suffering or shame or resentment, and it always damages relationships, and the protective use of force.
And protective force is different how?
It's used solely to prevent harm, to establish necessary boundaries, and to ensure safety. The intent is always to return to a state of connection. Strength establishes the boundary. It says no firmly, but love is what explains the yes behind the no. It connects the discipline back to core values and genuine care. Let's bring this down to our daily lives. The third application, habits and personal discipline. This is where strength looks like just consistency. It really is. And it starts with understanding grit as consistency. As we said, grit needs both perseverance of effort and consistency of interests. People who are constantly distracted by the next shiny object, the next new passion, they struggle to build the endurance needed for mastery. Gritty people just stick with it for years.
But that effort is exhausting. So how do we conserve that precious willpower resource so we're not running on empty every single day?
We do it by creating what you could call an order ecosystem. You preserve your willpower by radically reducing the number of unnecessary decisions you have to make.
This sounds like Benjamin Franklin. He was famous for this.
He was. He knew that putting things in their places, and that meant physically, like cleaning your desk, but also mentally, like having a routine to let go of the day's stress, was essential for preserving mental energy for the next morning.
So order lowers the energy barrier for starting.
It lowers it dramatically.
Yeah.
If you have a habit, a ritual, it requires far less conscious, metabolically expensive effort than making a fresh decision every single time. By creating systems, waking up at the same time, planning your day the night before, you move tasks from that high-friction prefrontal cortex to the automatic, low-energy part of your brain. You avoid decision fatigue, and you save your willpower for the things that really, truly matter.
Order lowers energy barrier, reduces friction.
Okay, so this principle that strength is built through consistency and volume, not intensity. It means we need a practical, daily way to actually train that AMCC, that willpower hub in our brain.
We do, and we can call this the strength rep. The idea is to build that endurance through what we call graduated pressure.
Graduated pressure, meaning small, intentional doses of discomfort.
Exactly. We want systematic exposure to small acts of discomfort, what we can call microsucks, to incrementally thicken those neural pathways for tenacity. You're training your brain to see discomfort as part of the process, not as a signal to quit. All right, so let's walk through the 4 steps. This is something you can do in just a few minutes a day. Step 1. Pick one hard task, the microsuck. And this needs to be something small, just slightly uncomfortable, that you'd normally avoid because it creates that limbic friction.
So, examples.
It could be choosing to take the stairs instead of the elevator, or waiting 10 minutes before you grab that snack or coffee you're craving, or even just forcing yourself to finish one small, boring admin task when your motivation has completely vanished. It doesn't need to be heroic. It just needs to be intentionally inconvenient.
The power of microsucks. Okay, you've picked your microsuck. Step 2, shrink to 60 seconds, the reset.
Before you do the task, you have to deliberately shift your nervous system out of its default reactive state and into that pause and plan state. The best way to do this is with box breathing.
Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4.
That's it. This simple ritual, it takes less than 60 seconds, but it stimulates the vagus nerve, which is the primary brake on your nervous system. It forces a physiological shift from a state of panic to a state of calm, ensuring you're acting from stability, not from emotional impulse. Step 2 is the reset. Step 3, do it now, the execution. So while you're actually doing the microsuck climbing those stairs and your heart rate starts to spike, what do you do then? You use a cognitive tool, and the most effective one is labeling.
Labeling.
Simply label the feeling, either out loud or just internally. Say to yourself, this is suboptimal, or I am feeling resistance right now.
Why does just naming the feeling work so well?
Because labeling diffuses the panic. It moves the processing of the emotion from the reactive limbic system, the hot brain, to the prefrontal cortex, the cool, logical brain. By naming the feeling, you externalize it. You break the automatic link between the feeling and your reaction to it. You engage your logical brain, and you prevent that emotional override. Okay, so you've done the task. You're at the top of the stairs. Step 4, schedule the next rep, the accrual. This is maybe the most important step. The moment the small task is done, you are not finished. You have to immediately commit to the invest and accrue model we talked about. Strength is built on consistency and volume, not one single win.
So you have to decide right then and there when and where you're going to do it again.
When and where. You schedule the next intentional microsuck. By doing that, you convert one isolated act of willpower into a repeatable, sustainable system for developing enduring character.
Schedule intentional discomfort.
Okay, so even with a system like that in place, we all hit internal obstacles that can just completely derail our steadiness. Let's troubleshoot the 5 most common drains on willpower. Let's do it. Number 1 is the obstacle. Anxiety or panic. That feeling of being totally untethered, your mind just racing about the future. What's the fix?
The fix is sensory grounding. Immediately, name internally is find 5 things you can see, 4 things you can physically feel, like the chair under you, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
And this works because it yanks your brain out of the abstract future and plants it firmly in the present moment.
Exactly. It anchors you in the immediate, neutral reality, and that breaks the cycle of anxious thoughts. Okay, obstacle number 2. Negative self-talk, that internal critic that just drains all your mental energy.
Right.
It takes more willpower to fight yourself than it does to fight the actual problem. The fix here is cognitive reframing. Use a simple 3-step process. Catch it, catch the negative thought like I'm a failure, check it. Is that empirically 100% true? Almost never. And change it. Rephrase it to something neutral or positive, like I'm learning how to manage my energy better.
You have to protect your internal resources from your own internal sabotage. You do. Obstacle number 3, energy crash fatigue. This is purely physical. Willpower depletion is a real metabolic event. The fix is metabolic maintenance. This means planning your food.
Planning your energy. Schedule small, complex carbohydrate snacks every couple of hours, especially when you're under stress, to keep your glucose stable. And build in micro breaks every 90 minutes. You can't manage time, but you can manage your energy capacity.
Emotional reactivity, especially anger. That instant emotional snap that just bypasses the pause and plan response entirely.
The fix for this one is fascinating. It's posture mimicry. Intentionally adopt the stillness of an archetype. Think of the tennis player Bjorn Borg. They called him Iceborg.
So you physically mimic being calm.
Yes. Between tasks, intentionally relax your jaw. Keep your hands open. It sends a top-down signal from your body to your brain's emotional centers that you are not, in fact, under immediate threat. It helps you regulate your emotion before the next high-stress moment. And the last one, number 5, a lack of purpose or direction. This is the big one. If you don't know why you're pushing through discomfort, you'll eventually run out of spiritual energy. The fix is affirmation. You need a high-level organizing principle.
Connecting the small daily action back to a core value. Exactly. You can use Fillmore's affirmation to ignite that deeper strength. I am a tower of strength, within and without. Aligning your daily actions with your core values, that transcends mere grit. It provides the spiritual fuel that makes strength truly imperishable. Okay, to quickly bring all of this together, we've really redefined what enduring power means, bringing together some old wisdom with modern science. So here are the 7 core components of lasting strength to carry forward.
First, strength equals steadiness, not intensity. The focus has to be on building that mitochondrial mass, on consistency, not just explosive force.
Second, strength is the pause and plan response. It's about overriding fight or flight by intentionally activating the AMCC, the brain's willpower hub.
Third, willpower is a finite, trainable muscle. It needs fuel, glucose, and rest, and it must be systematically stressed and then recovered.
Fourth, grit is an investment strategy. True tenacity means enduring daily discomfort now for a much larger long-term payoff.
Fifth, quiet leadership is loudest. Emulate the composure of figures like Tim Duncan and Rosa Parks. Stillness under pressure creates safety and real influence.
Sixth, love is the structural bridge. Without self-compassion, strength becomes brittle rigidity, which just leads to burnout and failure.
And finally, 7th, preparation prevents panic. Use simple rituals like box breathing and cognitive tools like labeling to neutralize crisis energy before it gets a chance to spiral.
Strength, the capacity to sustain.
So, we've established today that strength provides that crucial endurance for the long walk of life. It gives you the capacity to sustain your effort. But for that endurance to be truly sustainable, for you to maintain this over decades without just collapsing, strength has to interact with the next power in Fillmore's system.
That's right, because if we rely only on strength, we eventually just succumb to entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, the natural tendency for things to fall into chaos and decay. So next time, we're going to explore order.
Order is the art of rhythm, structure, and reducing unnecessary decisions.
And it's the key to making success feel not exhausting, but effortless and truly sustainable for the long haul. Thanks for being here. If you want the full series, check the playlist, and please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.